Hello everyone, myself Mayank. I would be taking the polity and governance part for December. I think current affairs module आप लोगों को मिल गया होगा. Okay, so we will just wait for 5 minutes. They are just bringing the presentation. Until that time, I will just try to go through this year's paper and let you maybe understand the importance. I think, but most of the part Jaspreet sir has already taken. Just a quick overview of the 2015 paper. Okay, so how many of you have seen the paper 2 of this year? Okay, just I think 20%. What about the rest? पेपर नहीं देखा? Mains 2015, GS paper 2. Okay, so this is a part of the strategy too. Until and unless you know what are the questions, you won't be able to develop that frame of mind to read the newspaper. So please maybe go back today and see last 2 or 3 years GS, Polity and Governance paper. ठीक है? Other than the paper, just try to do one more exercise. Open the syllabus of GS paper 2 and see if you could find out which section of the syllabus is that particular question. For example, if this year question, first question, Uniform Civil Code. Second question, Federalism. Third question, Panchayati Raj. Fourth question, if I remember correct, was I think Khap Panchayats. Ordinance? Fourth is Khap. Okay, whatever. Fourth is, let's say, Khap. Fifth is Ordinance. Sixth is Arbitration and Conciliation Bill. ठीक है? Everything you could get the debate in the newspaper. You can get very good articles in the newspaper. Other than that, you can get a lot of fodder material in the newspaper. Maybe we will be discussing this in this class too, how some of the materials you could use in writing these answers. Going forward, seventh question, Diwali, Supreme Court judgment. Eighth question on NGO. There were 2 questions on NGO, let's say 8 and 9. One on SHG, one on education, one on health. Simple question on education, ki what will be the impact of foreign institutions, foreign educational institutions coming into India. Health, simple question, ki the debate about public versus private. Then there was one question on whistleblowers bill. One question was on corporate governance, Satyam scam. So if you see all the questions of paper 2, you could directly find a link. If may not be of this year's newspaper, then the debate was in last year. For example, the case of Satyam scam. The scam happened in 2009, but after that, there were a lot of a new bill which was brought by the government. A lot of steps was taken by SEBI. Okay, and there are a lot of other examples where the corporate institution has failed. For example, there was this Shraddha scam in West Bengal. Okay, so you may have given those examples in this. NGO FCRA Act. I think if you are reading the newspaper since last year, you could very well say this. A direct question from newspaper that भाई बच्चों को दिवाली में पटाखे जलाने चाहिए नहीं जलाने चाहिए, ठीक है? See the type of question. They are asking your view. Why? Because the Supreme Court said that it is upon the legislature to decide whether we should ban it or not. But if you have to develop this concept, maybe you need to read 2 or 3 editorials that are coming in the newspaper. Every editorial has its own perspective. So on the basis of those perspective, you could develop your argument And if you give arguments in this question, then out of 12.5, I think minimum 6 you would be getting. Fact based direct question, if you are missing the newspaper, this and whistleblower, I don't think anyone would be able to write these two questions. These two plus FCRA, these three are the questions which most of the people felt difficult in this year's paper 2. IR was easy, so ma'am will be taking the class of IR, she will be discussing that part. All these questions. Okay, so what you need to do, I think newspaper reading, Jaspreet sir has already gave you a blueprint. But what I would suggest still is see the newspaper, correlate it with the topic of the syllabus and make notes out of it, or you may use Vision's notes. In this lecture, what I will do is that I think there are 16 to 17 topics in the December current affairs. So I will be dealing 3-4 topics which I find are very relevant in detail. Rest of the topics we will try to see how they could be used in as a fodder material in most of the answers. Okay, so let's begin. So the outline of the discussion would be, first the analysis is done. Now after the analysis, maybe just go back and maybe just go back and do an analysis for last 2 years paper. Try to find the subtopic of the syllabus with the questions and see if you are reading the newspaper since last year, whether you would be able to answer that question or not. Now in the discussion further, I will try to emphasize on how you could categorize the news with respect to prelims, mains and interview. Some notes making fun day I think we will get along with the discussion, and then finally news articles and analysis. Okay, so firstly we will move to this topic. I think you could find it in page 18. Supreme Court verdict on Haryana Panchayati Raj Amendment Act 2015. Sorry, 16. Okay, I think I have not the so updated version then. Okay, so any news, any new article that comes in the newspaper, just try to emphasize on these points, key why it is in news. What are the law and constitutional provisions with respect to this, what is happening, what are the facts associated with the judgment, what is its analysis. Can you frame some questions out of whatever you read? If you are able to frame a question, then that means you can appreciate that you have read the paper correctly. If you are not able to identify the theme, if you are not able to frame a question on that theme, then maybe go back and read it once more. Then some questions on the basis of this judgment we will discuss, and finally the conclusion. So how many of you have read this topic? Okay, so what about the rest people? No? Silence is a silent weapon, or? Okay, so see what happened is that I think a lot of people, you might have heard that the Supreme Court gave a verdict on Haryana Panchayati Raj Amendment Act, that they upholded the verdict, they upholded the act. Thereby we are dealing with this topic. Okay, so the topic deals with universal adult suffrage. Okay, this is the basic law and constitutional provision. Article 326, which of the Indian Constitution grants universal adult suffrage, according to which every adult is entitled to cast his vote. Now what I am why I am telling you this, because there is a debate in this particular article, this particular news, that whether article 326 is it a constitutional right Is it a fundamental right or is it a statutory right? Okay, so this is a debate which came into focus because of this particular judgment. Okay. Some of the scholars are saying this. Some of the scholars believe on the basis of Supreme Court judgment it is this. Okay, we will come into this debate later. So this is what we have to see. Now, what are the salient features of the Act? The Act says that there are certain eligibility criteria for contesting elections to the Panchayat. What are those criteria? Having minimum educational qualification, that is, the law fixes matriculation as the essential qualification for general candidates, and class 8 for women in the general category as well as scheduled caste candidates. Having a functional toilet at home, not having defaulted in cooperative loans or having outstanding dues on rural domestic electricity connections, not charged by a court for a grave criminal offence, and the last one, that is whatever be the disqualifications which are prescribed in our own constitution. Okay, now ठीक है, मतलब इतना तो I think सबको पता होगा, ठीक है, this तो I think you have read in the news, but then also try to see that what is the logic behind the Supreme Court's judgment upholding the law. That is why the Supreme Court thinks that they should have a minimum educational qualification. What is the logic behind a functional toilet at home? Why? Because any law which is arbitrary, the Supreme Court has the power to declare it as void. If it has upholded the law, then there should be some logic on which the Supreme Court said that the law is valid. So a comparison with what other states say about Panchayat polls, Haryana has this particular category, Rajasthan says that class 8, I think 8 for a Sarpanch, class 5th for scheduled areas, there should be no leprosy patient. Andhra Pradesh has its own criteria. Karnataka has its own criteria. Toilet at home must give written undertaking that it would be built within 1 year. So this is progressive in one sense. Gujarat, there should be a toilet at home. Chhattisgarh also talks about toilet at home. Okay, so we will now deal with what are the implications of having such a criteria. Implications not only with respect to the constitutional provision, but also implications with respect to democracy. That is, what will be the implication of de-enfranchisement of a large number of people on the basis of this criteria. So what the Supreme Court said with respect to the conditions is that this is the constitutional angle. Neither the state government lacked the power to enact such a law, nor could it be quashed for being arbitrary or discriminatory, because the classification is reasonable and based on intelligible differentia. Okay, the Supreme Court says that the law authorizes the prescription of disqualifications with respect to the right to contest. Okay, hereby the Supreme Court is differentiating Article 326, right to vote, right to contest. Further, the last point points out that even the Constitution maintains or stipulates certain disqualifications such as mental fitness, insolvency for occupying some offices. Thereby it cannot be said that more disqualifications by a competent legislative body would not be permissible. Okay, thereby here it is giving power to the legislature to prescribe certain disqualifications. Okay. Further, the Supreme Court also said on that why these criterias are not discriminatory. It says that it is only education which gives a human being the power to discriminate between right and wrong, good or bad. So here comes a question of paper 4. Are you getting the point? So try to relate again paper 4 also with the Supreme Court judgments. If you again go back and see paper 4, you could see a lot of case studies in paper 4 correlate with the case studies happening in India. Thereby there was a case of Dalit cook and upper caste students. So that was a direct question from the newspaper. So this could again be a question whereby they could say that, is education being the criteria of being intelligence? Do having certain minimum degree makes you intelligent? So that is a thing which people needs to debate and decide. Other than that, it says that if people still do not have a toilet, it is not because of their poverty, but because of their lacking the requisite will. Okay. Now again, a lot of people can contest this, because what the state government said is that out of like 8.5 lakh households in Haryana, the people who live below poverty line, 7.5 lakh household have already availed the state government's facility of building a toilet. Okay. Thereby the Supreme Court made this observation. But here a lot of nitty-gritties is not taken into consideration. That is how the policy is implemented in the ground level. Who knows it? Is this a valid reason for upholding such a criteria? So you could write this illustration in your answer. It will give a perspective to the examiner that the student has read the debate. He applies his mind, not only he read the fact, but he went one step further. He analyzed that what is the reasoning behind that fact, and maybe you could further conclude that what steps needs to be taken. I will present you an analysis that of toilets in India, since many of the panchayats, they have toilets as a criteria. See this reality: rural households without a toilet, 2011 census. Chhattisgarh prescribes having a toilet minimum criteria. 85% of the people don't have. See the criteria for rural India. So what you are doing, you are disenfranchising more than 50% of the people. Isn't it a responsibility of the state?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, sure.
How is it disenfranchisement? Because it is only barring you from contesting for elections.
So it is barring. It is.
Barred to vote.
You are barred not to contest.
Not to contest elections, sir. Not to contest elections is different from right to vote.
It is different. Na? Thereby we categorized into two. But that is what I am saying. Na? Article 326, universal adult franchise, is not only about right to vote. It is also about right to contest. That is my prime argument. Are you getting my point? Sorry, are you getting my point?
Enfranchisement means you have the right to vote.
That is what I am saying. Na? Ki it is not. Article 326 in the constitution, the provision not only talks about right to vote, right to contest also. This is the debate. Okay, this is where scholars are contesting that the Supreme Court took a view, it differentiated both. Okay? Thereby a lot of scholars are saying that there should be a curative petition which should be filed. And I think it needs to be seen further that how the Supreme Court comes out in respect of this rights. So this is a picture of toilets in India, especially the Haryana case. See what it will do. Most of the people, like 38% of SCs are only eligible, 48% of the rest of the people are eligible on the basis of this criteria. Now here are some of the questions. Can the legislator prescribe certain minimum qualifications? Come back to the basic question again. If it is a constitutional right, then qualifications needs to be changed by a constitutional amendment. But if the Supreme Court is differentiating it, right to vote as a constitutional right, right to contest as a statutory right, then the legislature has a power to prescribe certain minimum qualifications. So this is a debate which further needs to be looked upon. What would be the likely impact of disenfranchisement of such a large number of people? Why? Because we have seen a lot of positive cases happening in rural India, where a number of women have been empowered, number of people have been empowered after the 73rd and 74th Amendment Act. Should the same criteria be applicable to elections of MPs or MLA? Can you think of this? What will happen if we say that people in higher authority in India should be educated? So here you are saying that contesting panchayat should have certain minimum qualifications. Why not MPs and MLAs?
It should be top-down approach rather than bottom approach.
So there are a lot of questions which needs to be asked. So this particular question even you could write in your answer. You could write just simple question. Why can't a top to bottom approach should be followed, as I said, and bottom approach is followed in this case. Why can't the same criteria be applicable to election of MPs and MLAs? So what should be the right way of implementation? Some pertinent questions again. To run a panchayat or any office of responsibility, do you need intelligence or do you need a degree of education? So this may be your ethics question. Why? Because the having minimum qualifications in panchayat, what it says, you need a degree of education. Though you could get a degree in India, that is not a big thing. But especially for people who are disempowered, belonging to the rural sections of the society, okay, is this provision not discriminatory? Is education a must criteria for choosing between good and bad? Again, what you are doing, you are trying to counter the Supreme Court's argument. Same question, ethics paper. This is directly you could club. Isn't it a problem to equate education with intelligence and degree with competence? You are doing this thing now. You are saying that if someone is educated, we think he is intelligent. He may or he may not. That is a different criteria. So these are some of the questions which you need to ask. So I think by now you get a blueprint how to analyze a particular issue. Okay, so at least do this exercise. This is very important. You know, a lot of people, I think, spent a lot of time reading newspapers. I guess most of the people will be spending more than an hour. Okay. So daily an hour, I think 365 days, 365 hours. So I think a lot of time is being spent or reading the newspaper. So try to do a analysis or an impact analysis. Are you able to write whatever you read in your answers? Are you able to understand that editorial? Just do this simple exercise, frame a question on that editorial. If you are able to frame, then you understood it. If not, then you are just reading it for the sake of reading. Because अगर आप कोई भी एडिटोरियल देखेंगे ना, इनिशियली वो एक इंट्रोडक्शन देता है. इंट्रोडक्शन के बाद द एडिटोरियल टॉक्स अबाउट द थीम, देन ही ट्राइज टू ब्रिंग आउट हिज आर्ग्यूमेंट्स, आइदर सपोर्टिंग इट और निगेटिंग इट. If he is a balanced guy, he will give you both the points. For this particular, refer to maybe going back Upendra Bakshi. He wrote an editorial in Indian Express. Just for making you understand this particular article, since we discussed it, just read this article, go back in Indian Express, see how he presented the editorial. Okay, he talked about the theme, he gave his arguments, positive, negative, and then he concluded. If you are able to understand the theme which comes here, then you would be able to frame a question. Okay. And most of the question which you see in paper 2 are from here only. The Supreme Court's judgment on Diwali, whether firecrackers should be allowed or not. This is again debatable right now. So I won't take a decision on that, because some of the scholars are saying that the Supreme Court is wrong. Some of the scholars are saying that they should find a curative petition, and it needs to be further seen that whether it's a constitutional or a statutory right. This particular guy, he takes this opinion that the Supreme Court has seen right to contest as a statutory right. So any other questions on this particular topic? Okay, we will then move to the next topic. Just a conclusion to this topic: more reforms are needed before such a law is implemented. Maybe you could write the example of Karnataka, where it is mentioned that if you don't have a functional toilet, then you will be given 1 year whereby you could make a toilet. Further, you could conclude by such a statement that wisdom plays a greater role than education at local governance level, especially villages. Okay, your experience is much greater in handling the problems of governance rather than having an educational criteria. So, coming to the first article, now I will glance through most of the articles. Wherever I find it very important or wherever you could use it in your answers, I will try to tell it to you. National Waterways Bill 2015. I think you all know it was in the news. The government brought a new bill for inland waterways. Concerns with respect to the provisions of the bill. Who is the regulating body? What is the act under which it is framed? See, this provision, regulatory provision. From here you could make a question from prelims. Okay, यहाँ से prelims का question frame होगा कि कौन सा एक्ट है जिसके अंदर आपने इसके लिए रेगुलेटरी बॉडी बनाई और इस सेक्टर को रेगुलेट कर रहे हो. दिस इज अ मेंस क्वेश्चन. एडवांटेजेस ऑफ इनलैंड वाटर ट्रांसपोर्ट एंड प्रॉब्लम्स विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इनलैंड वाटर ट्रांसपोर्ट. आई थिंक ब्रॉडली यू ऑल नो व्हाट आर द एडवांटेजेस, व्हाट आर द प्रॉब्लम्स, एक्सेट्रा. जस्ट फॉर द रिविजन पार्ट, currently we have 6 national waterways. NW1 Ganga Haldia in river Ganga, Haldia to Allahabad. NW2 in river Brahmaputra. NW3 West Coast Canal. 4 Godavari, Krishna and canals. 5 Brahmi Delta and canals, and 6 in Barak River. This is important because this is new. Now I think last year in prelims this was asked. River Barak, where is the river located? So this was asked in prelims. So such type of questions could be framed. So you should have an eye to look into such details. So why in news? The government recently approved the bill. The amendment proposes to declare 101 additional inland waterways as national waterways, taking their total number to 111 from presently 5. The bill will also cover the existing 5 national waterways. So what are the constitutional provisions? Again, this is this is something from a prelims angle, that what are the constitutional provisions on the basis of which this bill has been brought by the central government. Union list entry 24 talks about shipping and navigation on inland waterways. Entry 30, entry 56. You don't need to remember the entries. Okay, it is very difficult. I don't think most of the people, but yeah, some of the entries you know. भाई public order कहाँ है? रोज की बात हो रही है तो public order तो पता होना चाहिए कहाँ है. Agriculture कहाँ है? Agriculture which list? State list. Okay. So same way union list आपको पता होना चाहिए, state list से पता होना चाहिए कि कहाँ पे है. Concurrent list में कौन सा provision है. Always try to see this constitutional angle, especially when you are reading polity and governance. लक्ष्मीकांत साथ में रखो, ठीक है, और देखते जाओ कि कहीं पे भी फंडामेंटल राइट की बात हो रही है, डीपीएसपी की बात हो रही है, कौन सा प्रोविजन ऑफ डीपीएसपी. व्हाट आर द एडवांटेजेस? फर्स्ट, द रेगुलेटर इनलैंड वाटरवे अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया. व्हाट इज द एक्ट? इनलैंड वाटरवे अथॉरिटी ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1985. व्हाट आर द एडवांटेजेस? जितने भी मोड ऑफ ट्रांसपोर्ट है, basically you could make a framework which will help you in all those sectors by cost effective, fuel efficient, low level of emissions as comparable to the other mode. Now industrial clusters could be developed along the national waterway area. Tourism could be promoted. Further, it can have an spillover effect on other modes of transportation. क्या है कि if your cargo moves through waterway, then road congestion would be taken care of. फिर रेलवे में भी कम सामान जाएगा. क्यों? क्योंकि भाई यहाँ से चला गया काफ़ी सामान. प्लस इफ़ यू आर अ जोग्राफी स्टूडेंट, देन आई थिंक यू माइट बी नोइंग मच अबाउट दिस एडवांटेजेस की मेनी ऑफ द रिवर्स coal transportation could be undertaken, since which will again free our railways, and railway could undertake other activities. So how many of you read one newspaper like Hindu, and how many of you read 2 newspapers? Anyone? Okay, 3? No one. Okay, so I would suggest that get the topic from a newspaper and then search the topic on the internet. Maybe over a period of time, you know what you will develop? You will develop this habit of finding the guy who is a specialist in this particular area. For example, with respect to constitutional provisions, this guy Upendra Bakshi writes very good articles. Let's say with respect to a topic on economics, let's say agriculture, Ashok Gulati writes very good articles on agriculture. Okay. So what you will do is that then after a period of time now, you won't have to go through here and there. You could directly go, you know that this guy will write an article, maybe in this newspaper today, that newspaper later. Okay, go search his name, since you know the topic, it came in the news by just reading the Hindu. Okay, so do that kind of exercise. So that is what I think in corporate terms now is nowadays said that don't do hard work, do smart work. Though the government is becoming smart day by day, but still we don't know. So maybe if you are seeing the booklet, we can continue with it. The problems of inland water transport. It is written there. There is a seasonal fall in water level. That is, there is a problem in maintaining the minimum flow of water. Further, there is diversion of water for irrigation purposes. There is problem of siltation. Further, there is a problem with respect to the Himalayan rivers. Am I audible to all of you? Yes. Then further, interstate coordination and infrastructural development along the waterway is again an issue that needs to be taken care of. Now see how the questions could be framed from this particular topic. Okay, enumerate the benefits which can accrue to the people and the economy by the development of inland water transport, or discuss the impediments in development of inland water transport in India. Analyze how far the recent measures taken by the government will go in development of this mode of transport. So always do this particular exercise, whatever topic you read. For example, we just did inland waterway bill. Are you able to frame these questions? And if yes, are you able to answer them on the basis of whatever you have read? If you do this, then you would be able to complete the paper in the exam, because one of the general feedback that we get from a lot of people is that they are not able to complete their paper. They are not able to write 20 answers. Why? Because this structure is not yet developed. Okay, so if you write these questions, write answer, make a framework, make your mind think in this particular way, then it will be a lot more helpful in the exam and you would be able to complete the paper in time. So maybe I won't say that you have to do it, but try this exercise maybe if you are joining test series anywhere, just for one single test. If you are, let's say, going for economics paper, so before that, if you are reading like revising last 2 months newspaper, try to do this exercise. Go to the exam and see if you are able to complete the paper. Let's move to the next topic. GYAN, Global Initiative of Academic Networks. See, now such topic is not one where a direct question could be framed, but it gives you a lot of fodder material to apply in a lot of questions. For example, there was this question on foreign educational institutions. Should they be allowed in India? Okay. You could just write this particular illustration in that case, sir, the government has initiated a step in this direction whereby a number of foreign scholars, teachers, they will be coming to India and teaching in Indian institutions for a semester course. Okay, so you could just say this line. What you are doing by writing this, you are telling the examiner that you know what is happening currently. You are telling the examiner that what are the actions that are being taken by the government to bring foreign excellence into India. What is the objective of the scheme? To boost the quality of country's higher education through international collaboration. Also, try this every time you read a government scheme. Try to find the objective, because most of the time you know the salient features of the scheme, you know what the scheme is all about, but you don't know the objective. So if in the newspaper article the objective is not there, note down the scheme, go back to the internet, see the ministry's website and find this objective. It is very important. Any scheme of government of India, if there is a question in the paper, start with the objective. The objective of this scheme is this. What is its impact? Impact would be availability of best teachers, international collaboration, promoting diversity. Concerns, a lot of pay is given. A lot of pay is given to the foreign scholars. India will pay an academic $8,000 for a week's teaching, or for 12 to 14 hours of contact, and up to $12,000 for 20 to 28 hours of contact, or about 2 weeks. This will include travel cost. So I think it's a lot of money. So again, what it will do, it will help to expose Indian institutions to world class faculty. It has also, मतलब आप लोगों ने कई बार देखा होगा, कई प्रोफेसर सबैटिकल लेके जाते हैं, मतलब विच एवर इंस्टीट्यूट यू आर, यू मस्ट हैव सीन ना कि कई बार आप प्रोफेसर से मिलने जाओ तो प्रोफेसर गायब रहता है, बाद में आपको पता चलता है यार सबैटिकल लेके फॉरेन गया हुआ है. तो दैट इज़ व्हाट इज़ गोना हैपन. मतलब प्रोफेसर्स दे कैन कम इंटरैक्ट विद इंडियन स्टूडेंट्स. One of the important point is that it will lead to internationalization of Indian universities. That is, Indian universities will be exposed to international professors. What are the concerns? Again, same point which we, huge remuneration. Some of the American universities has said that there might be copyright and copyright issues with respect to the recording of lectures. So it is just a fodder material you could use maybe in your essay, maybe in paper 4. Now the third fourth issue, ICT Development Index. Again, a fodder issue, difficult to frame a question directly on this issue, but the issue is very important. Let's say if you're talking about digital India, the government is every day talking about digital India, but what this index says, 131 out of 167 nations. What are the reasons for low ranking? Now, how can a question be framed on this particular index? Not only access but also ability to use ICT should be an important component of the Digital India program. Now, are you able to correlate how questions are framed in mains? Okay, so simple like ease of doing business, there might be a ranking. Now, using that ranking, a question could be framed that why the business opportunity in India is not very good. Discussed with a special reference to government's program of Digital India. तो index में क्या है? Generally कुछ नहीं, just try to find that what are the points of the index, what are the basic components. It is made of 5 indicators: fixed telephone subscription, mobile cellular telephone subscription, internet, international bandwidth, percentage of households with a computer, percentage of households with internet access. It is just a way to give you some information, not much. Reasons for low ranking, I think it is also given in the notes. I'm skipping this part. Just simple points. Now comes the main thing. So, Delhi's Jan Lokpal bill. So, what are the salient features of the bill? What are the concerns? And a comparison. I won't go into the comparison part because I don't think it's necessary now, since there's a lot of politics involved. But yeah, you should know what are the salient features and what are the concerns. A lot of people has commented that the bill is gonna fail. It won't be passing the legal provisions. Now, what are the salient features? It is important. Why? Year after year, questions has been asked on Lokpal, Lokayukt. Okay. So if any question is asked on such government law, maybe you could compare it with the law brought by our own Chief Minister. It covers all government employees from the Chief Minister to Group D officers. It provides legal right of protection to whistleblowers and witnesses. It envisages time-bound investigation and trial in corruption cases. Further, there is a provision for business, that is collusive corruption. See, there are two type of corruption when we tend to define: coercive and collusive. ठीक है? So this is a provision with respect to dealing with collusive corruption. The Lokpal chairperson and panel members will be selected by a panel consisting of chief minister, leader of opposition, 2 judges of the High Court, 1 previous Lokayukt, and 2 eminent citizens of the selected member. Now, what are the issues of concern? There is no independent budget. Again, every time the chief minister was saying ki it should be independent, but if you are not giving it an independent budget, will its autonomy not be compromised? Not empowered to appoint its own staff, no dedicated investment wing. Now this is one area where which is again needs further deliberation. Ki every time the political party said that without any investigation wing, the institution would be hollow. ठीक है? Now in its own bill he says that there is no dedicated investigation wing. The bill expects the full court of Delhi High Court to select a judge to be a member of the selection committee. Again, it is very difficult to reach consensus. Normally what is the criteria is that the chief judge appoints the guy, but again it needs to be seen whether this is manageable. Further issue of reappointment, it is not that he is debarred, but he can be reappointed. Now whether it would again lead to a tussle. Why? Because all the people or all the employees which are in NCT of Delhi are covered under this act. That is not only the state government employees but also the central government employees. Now this is the constitutional angle. Article 239AA states that if there is a conflict or inconsistency between an act passed by the Delhi Assembly and Parliament, the national act will prevail unless the Delhi law has been approval of the president. Now this is something which is with respect to people who are going for the interview. Okay, interview people should know this article, because there is a debate which is again going on with respect to should Delhi be given the status of a state, what is the constitutional provision with respect to Delhi. ठीक है? तो you should know this provision, you should know this debate, because interview में वो इसी टाइप के क्वेश्चन पूछते हैं, where there are arguments, counter arguments, and how forcefully you are presenting your argument. Some of the guys are saying that this is one of the way the current state government wants to bring the bill and then say that no, center is not allowing us to govern. So I don't know, a lot of conspiracy theories are going behind this bill. So next, underground coal gasification. Okay, so nothing much. I will just tell you the scientific aspect of it. कि भाई a bit technical. I don't know how many of you will appreciate कि यहाँ पे जो कोल बेड्स होते हैं उसकी जो गैस है उसके अंदर गैस ट्रैप्ड होती है. सो वी आर ट्राइंग टू यूज दैट गैस. ठीक है? द प्रोसेस इज यू अप्लाई प्रेशर फ्रॉम द आउटसाइड. आप प्रेशर डालते हो. ठीक है? एंड देन इनसाइड दैट गैस टेंड्स टू कम फ्रॉम द अदर होल. यहाँ से आपने गैसिफिकेशन एजेंट्स डाला, ऑक्सीजन एंड वाटर. यहाँ पे आपकी गैस ट्रैप्ड है. यहाँ से आपने एक लिंक दिया और गैस कम्स अप. Now why this particular project is important, you need to understand. It is important because a lot of areas where there is coal, it is very deeply embedded. Okay, thereby it is not very economical to do mining in that particular area. Thereby this is one such process whereby you could make the process cost effective and economic. Okay, so thereby the government, I think, came out with a proposal for underground coal gasification. The Union Cabinet recently approved a policy framework for development of UCG in coal and lignite bearing areas in the country. This could be a question in your paper 3 science and tech part. They could just simply ask what is syngas. I think we will be covering coming to that, or explain the concept of coal, underground coal gasification. In 2013 there was a question on shale gas. Okay, so there they asked this whole process कि भाई कहाँ पे होती है, कैसे बनती है, निकालने का प्रोसेस क्या है, उसके एनवायरमेंटल इश्यूज़ क्या हैं, इज़ द गैस अवेलेबल इन इंडिया, इफ़ येस देन इज़ देयर एनी गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी, what are the issues with respect to shale gas in India. तो ये सब आप देख सकते हो. Not much meaning, I think we understood. इसमें एक ये चीज़ important है, the syngas, it is a mixture of hydrogen, carbon monoxide, methane, carbon dioxide and higher hydrocarbons. Benefits, I think we talked in, maybe you could read in the paper too. So coming to the next, not much, New Delhi Declaration on Political Finance Regulation in South Asia 2015. This is important from a prelims point of view, because nowadays such type of question is being asked कि ये declaration हुआ था कहाँ पे हुआ था, ठीक है. Last year also I think there were 2 or 3 questions on this particular issue, ठीक है, कि Delhi declaration हुआ था with respect to what the declaration what, उसके पीछे का issue क्या है. तो it was a joint, I think there's some spelling mistake. It was a joint conference organized by the Election Commission of India, International IDEA, I think some intergovernmental body, and India International Institute of Democracy and Election Management. From here you could get some further materials with issues with respect to using money in elections, issues with respect to electoral reform. ठीक है. Conference ने क्या बोला? It suggested some principles which need to be incorporated. The declaration also has 9 regulations and implementing guidelines on वही कि भाई मनी कैसे स्पेंड करना है, अगर जितना मनी आप स्पेंड कर रहे हो उसको रोकना है, then what needs to be done. Further, this question can be asked, and this was also a particular theme of this conference, why we need to regulate the use of money in politics. So some of the points which you could use, because it is ये हमेशा एक डिबेट चलती आ रही है, और there could be a question which could be asked on this topic. The rising cost of running for office are keeping people from contesting election. I think you all very well know how much money is involved. You need a lot of money even to contest. It also creates a high degree of compulsion for corruption in the political arena. अब भाई भारतीय आदमी मतलब पैसे लगाएगा तो मिलने तो चाहिए यार. So corruption erodes performance, becomes one of the leading reasons for non-performance and compromised governance. Women especially, I think you should write this particular angle also. Women who account for half of the population are still underrepresented as they lack financial independence to be able to contest elections. This is one significant aspect which we always tend to miss. So please try to remember such kind of points. It will give you an advantage over the other guy while writing an answer. Especially मतलब I think आधा एक नंबर एक्स्ट्रा सिंपल ये पॉइंट लिखने से मिल सकता है. Moving further, one of the questions that appeared in this year mains, Arbitration and Conciliation Act Amendment Bill 2015. An ordinance was passed by the government, and subsequently a bill was brought in the Lok Sabha and passed also. Now we need to understand what is the background. See, why you need to understand the background is important, because if you see the question 2015, so what are the major changes brought in the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 through the recent ordinance promulgated by the President. अगर आपको background नहीं पता होगा तो you won't be able to comprehend this statement. Why? Because it is asking you to relate it with the Act of 1996. But if you have a vague idea what was the Act, what are the difficulties in the Act, और what are the impediments with respect to the provisions of the Act, तो गवर्नमेंट क्या करेगी भाई, उन impediments को सुधारने के लिए तो हम नया बिल लेके आ रहे हैं. ठीक है, मे बी यू कुड राइट एन आंसर और लेट्स से 12.5 में आपको 3-3.5 नंबर मिल जाएंगे. हाउ फार विल इट इम्प्रूव्स इंडियाज डिस्प्यूट रेजोल्यूशन मैकेनिज्म? डिस्कस. सो बैकग्राउंड again, I think everyone knows that the process of arbitration in India is slow, ineffective and expensive. India was ranked 178 out of 189 nations in the terms of enforcing contract by the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report. What was the earlier act about? The Law Commission also gave some recommendation. Now we need to make the process quicker and cost effective. Why? Because it will help in creating a business environment whereby investors can come and invest in India. Thereby it is one of the main, you could say, also component of Make in India program, because until and unless your policy is you have a regular policy. Until and unless you have an arbitration system or a judicial system which is effective, companies won't come. क्यों भाई arbitration के cases चल रहे हैं 10-10 साल. Which company would like to bear cost for 10 years for arbitration? So this is also one of the reasons that a lot of countries are not incorporated in India but in foreign destination, so that it becomes easier for them with respect to court cases. So an analysis, I just tried to develop one analysis, though the issue is a bit technical in nature. A relevant code for domestic and international arbitration matters. So the first point points to the Act of 1996. The second point points to the amendment, that what are the changes which are brought by the recent amendment. So you could just have a glance on the slide. So one thing further I wanted to emphasize in this particular question is that the question is how far this amendment will be able how far will it improves India's dispute resolution mechanism. So if you have to do a comparison, then you should know the broad aspects, that applicability of the provision, power of court to refer to a party to arbitration if agreement exists, कि जो भी ऐसे cases या bill आते हैं, ठीक है, try to use like 5 or 6 subheadings under which you could categorize the bill, the main provisions. You just have to see this much, you don't have to go beyond this. और I think इतना ही पूछते हैं एग्जाम में, इससे बाहर कोई नहीं आता. So further, one of the important point is that public policy could act as a ground for challenging the award. Previously, it was these two provisions only. The amendment modifies the ambit of violation of public policy to only include those awards that are affected by fraud or corruption, in contravention with the fundamental policy of the Indian law and conflict with the notions of morality or justice. Now this is one of the significant aspects which you could write, that there is a time period for arbitral awards. The current bill says that the amendment introduces a provision that requires an arbitral tribunal to make its award within 12 months. This may be extended by a 6-month period. This is a very important provision where you are talking about time-bound redressal. Further, the appointment of the arbitrator, the court has to appoint the arbitrator within a specified time. Further, there is also a provision to fast track arbitration. If the companies could pay a bit more amount, then the award could be granted within 6 months. Further, I think 2 or 3 more topics are there. This is one important case. I think you could again, if there is a question on Lokpal, Lokayukt, or if there is a question on corruption, then you could highlight this particular incident. Supreme Court appoints Uttar Pradesh Lokayukt. So, do a constitutional debate comes to your mind? Which one? Can anyone point it? Separation of powers. ठीक है? Can the judiciary provide for a function which is of the executive?
But it's not arbitrary. It gives warning.
That is a different case, but it is a case. You could bring it into judicial activism, judicial overreach. So what is the background? What are the constitutional provisions and analysis? Just find these 3 things, and I think the issue is done. So the Supreme Court took the extraordinary step of appointing Justice retired Virendra Singh. The court said that it was compelled to invoke its extraordinary power under Article 142, owing to astonishing circumstances, and because all hopes and expectation of this court have gone in vain and remain unheeded. ठीक है? So the Lokayukt which was there in Uttar Pradesh, वो I think पिछले 9 या 10 साल से उस पोजीशन पे है. I think he was appointed in 2006 and still he was continuing. So thereby the Supreme Court took this extreme step of appointing the Lokayukt. Now you need to write this if any question comes, that under which article Supreme Court used its power. So this is the I wanted to give you a timeline. It is not that the Supreme Court appointed him directly, but after giving repeated warnings that the Supreme Court took the final step of appointing the Lokayukt. So where you could use it as an illustration for judiciary versus executive on issue of seriousness of the government in tackling corruption. If you are having the same Lokayukt for 9 years, then are you serious? Literally. So judicial activism versus overreach, breakdown of the governance. So this is said as one of the reasons why there is judicial activism. Further, you could also talk what are the reforms that should be undertaken. So how the Lokayukt could be made more efficient. So Arunachal Pradesh controversy, I think do it yourself. There's a lot of happenings which is going on in Arunachal Pradesh. Okay, so just read that. I think read it from the book. Defense sector reforms. I think last second topic. Some of the points which I would emphasize in this. Maybe we'll talk about a broad framework which could be undertaken. So why in news? I think you must be reading in news that every other day we are having a defense deal. Every other day we are coming with a new policy, let's say with respect to defense manufacturing, with respect to defense acquisition. Okay, we are saying that we need to build our defense industry. So why in news? Deal with Russia, joint manufacturing of 226 military helicopters to boost the strategic ties. And further, India is one of the, I think you all know that particular point, one of the biggest arm importer of the world. So any one of you has any statistics with respect to the defense sector? How much percentage of GDP we are spending in defense? 2%. What is the percentage of total expenditure? 13%. No, expenditure and GDP is different. So I think it's not clear. So some data and facts. Defense budget 13% of our expenditure, 2% of GDP. The indigenous acquisition is very low, 35%, and this 35% also is largely by public sector units. There is likely no private participation. Further, this is also one of the important part, that 40% of the budget in capital expenditure is used for equipment modernization. कि हमारे पास जो equipment पहले से हैं उनको हमें modernize करने में 40% पैसे तो उसी में चले जा रहे हैं, बचते हैं 60%, उसको भी हम foreign companies को दे देते हैं. ठीक है, तो सॉरी 60% का आई थिंक 35% हम इंडिजिनस यूज़ करते हैं, बाकी बाहर दे देते हैं. तो thereby we need to develop our defense sector. So if there is a question on defense, if in the introduction part you write let's say 2 of the facts, ठीक है, then it will be very helpful. Why? Because it will tell the examiner that you know what is the problem. First identify the problem, then only the government will be able to bring a solution, or then only you will be able to analyze the question. Now thereby we have a program Make in India in defense sector. Like why Make in India? Always there is a question, why Make in India? So if you could just draw 2 graphs, GDP, percentage share, percentage employment, then it is clear to the examiner that you know what is the problem, why we need Make in India. So I think you know what is the percentage GDP of various sectors and what is the percentage employment, whereas agriculture 15 to lagbhag 17%, employment is more than 50%. Now whatever be the excess labor which comes out from this agricultural sector, it needs to be incorporated in the manufacturing sector. Thereby you are talking about Make in India. So always try to emphasize that whatever be the government policy, there would be a reason. There is a problem which that government policy is trying to tackle. Further, a question was there in paper 3 2004, FDI in the defense sector is now said to be liberalized. What influence this is expected to have on the Indian defense and economy in the short and long run? ठीक है. Now if you know the statistics which we saw in the last slide, then this particular question also you could start by giving the facts, and then write the answer. So further there is a committee which was constituted by the government of India, Dhirendra Singh committee. Okay. Nowadays a lot of questions are asked on the committees, so please keep a tab on whatever committee is there and what are its recommendation. I think the committee came back in July or August 2015, so I'm not very sure how much relevant it is now, but it talks about these 5 things. I think it is very well given in the module. You could read it yourself. Strategic partnership model. Whatever you think is there in the report of the committee. Okay. If you don't know the committee also, just think. Just have a logical thinking that what are the problems and how it needs to be tackled, and write those. At least कुछ तो marks मिलेंगे. Further, remission of sentences. I think you must have heard about the Tamil Nadu government taking a decision with respect to the assassins of Rajiv Gandhi. So what are the judgment, what are the constitutional provisions and the ground for judgment? Why news? So the Supreme Court struck down the Tamil Nadu government's decision to release 7 killers of former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. Constitutional bench rejected the argument that the 7 prisoners should not be robbed of their hope to be freed on remission. ठीक है, तो just try to do one thing कि जो भी Supreme Court के judgment आते हैं ना, try to keep a tab on them. भाई because 2014 में if you see 2-3 क्वेश्चन आ गए थे just on the basis of Supreme Court judgments. 15 में भी आप देखोगे तो there was a direct question on this firecrackers based on Supreme Court judgment. The question on ordinances, there also Supreme Court judgment was needed. Further what other? और कोई क्वेश्चन था क्या सुप्रीम कोर्ट जजमेंट? खाप पंचायत. See, 3 direct questions on the basis of Supreme Court judgment. So whenever something like this happens, just try to keep a tab, make a separate folder of Supreme Court judgments. ठीक है, और वो judgments लिखते जाओ, उसके points लिखते जाओ. So I think not much to discuss. You all know the points. It is also given in the module. So the central argument is that what the Supreme Court has said, that concurrence of the center in cases investigated by central agencies should be there before the state government uses its power of remission. Okay. So also I think ये तो आप लोगों को पता होगा कि what are the legal or constitutional provisions with respect to remission of sentences. Article 72, Article 161. Let's maybe just try to read. If you have any difficulty, I am outside. We could just discuss. What are the grounds of the judgment? So the Supreme Court said that the center and not the state will have primacy in deciding whether remission should be granted to lifetime convicts in cases which concern the CBI or any other central agency. Further, the Supreme Court also said that the killers of former PM Rajiv Gandhi, it shattered the faith of the entire country, so do not even deserve a ray of hope that they will be released one day. Okay, so maybe you know that the Supreme Court invokes the principle of also rarest of the rare in cases of death penalty. In this also the Supreme Court is trying to develop some principle on the basis of which further judgments could be undertaken, that who could be remitted, who could not be remitted. Again one topic, this is I think a bit important, maybe prelims, mains, interview, I think all the 3 subsections is covered. Non-utilization of cess money. Okay. I think this question is also asked ki, what is cess? Is it shared between the center of the states, or is it only the center which gets this particular amount? Okay. There is a CAG report which says that the government finance release recently revealed that more than 1.4 lakh crore of funds collected by the government under various cess for purpose as varied as higher education, road development and the welfare of construction workers are lying unutilized. ठीक है. So there मतलब a lot of topics can spur out of this particular topic. मतलब let's see, just as there could be a debate about direct versus indirect taxation. So cess is a direct form or an indirect form of taxation? Indirect. Okay. Thereby you could say that it is regressive. Direct taxes generally are progressive. Okay. So there could be a debate on this. Then there could be a debate that since this center versus state, since this is the money which is only belongs to the center, and that too for a specific purpose, and that too lying unutilized. Further, we need to ask question that is there any body or any provision which makes sure that the purpose for which the cess is collected, it is used. Okay, so these are all the questions which we need to answer. Over the years, the government has levied a number of cess for spreading education, welfare of workers, road development. The nature of cess is such that if the money is not used for the designed purpose, it will remain dormant. So what are the concerns? There is no sharing with the states. Despite this being unutilized funds, the government has shown that it is still lean on cess. I think you know also this point that currently for Swachh Bharat, 0.5% of cess would be levied. Further, with respect to aviation, we are talking about 2% extra cess. Diversion of funds or being utilized, that is also a problem. Further, there is a lack of transparency in utilization of this money. Thereby, I think this is an important topic on which this year a question could be asked, because the CAG has highlighted this topic. Further, I think bear with me, two more topics. Food sector regulation. I think you all know what is happening. So Maggi noodles was one case, but this article is not about Maggi noodles. But though I think we would thoroughly enjoy. Which noodles most of the people tend to have? Maggi, ITC, Nestle, or our own Patanjali? Maggi. So just a very small topic, maybe if there is a question on food sector, you could relate. It is in news because the see what happens is that if any private company has to launch any particular product, the FSSAI, it said that they have to get a pre-approval of introducing that food product. Okay? But the private players, they went to the Bombay High Court. The Bombay High Court said that it quashed the circular of FSSAI on procedure for product approval. Okay? Previously, what was the guideline? The guideline previously was that if you are using the same ingredients, if you are using the same preservatives and additives which has been already approved by FSSAI, then you don't need a product approval. But the FSSAI in 2013, it came out with a product approval process, which currently the Bombay High Court said is is null and void. It said that the FSSAI Act 2006, FSA Act 2006, Food Safety Standards Act 2006 does not approve of this process. But now the FSSAI is saying that again we want to introduce this process by some other methods. So it needs to be seen how the legal battle will carry forward. What are the concerns? The main concerns are that first, with respect to food processing industry, this is also important with respect to paper 3. There is a direct subtopic, food processing industry. Why it is important? Because we all know that food processing industry in India is at a very nascent stage. Okay? Every time we talk that we should do this and that, but we don't have proper regulatory mechanism or a regulator. So it does not bode well for the sector. Importance of food processing industry and how this particular decision will impact. If you have to take pre-approval of any product, then what it will make more bureaucratic hurdles. भाई आप product launch नहीं कर पाओगे जब आपको launch करना है. It will take time to get approval from the particular authority. Further, the authority is located maybe in the center or in the state capitals. But जो आपकी food processing industry है, there are many small players which are located in, let's say, tier 2 cities. Again, they have to travel to the state capital, have a lot of bureaucratic hurdles. So the recent actions of the FSSAI, including those against Nestle's India's Maggi noodles, created a fear psychosis in the industry, killing innovation. Further, there are allegations of harassment of companies by officials on trivial grounds. Thereby, we need to understand that what was our objective behind the act and what is the objective of the regulatory body. Okay, we need to improve the ease of doing business, and what we are doing here, we are creating more hurdles. So again, this is an illustration which you could also use with respect to, let's say, ease of doing business. So way forward, the food security regulator must follow global practices and should allow industry to self-certify compliance with standards. Question could be asked both in prelims and mains. Prelims simple, वो यही पूछ लेंगे कौन सा एक्ट है या फिर कौन सी बॉडी है. मेंस में तो I think you could very well understand. Plus, if this is the problem, now you have identified the problem, you could tell what could be the solution. I think the last topic, there is a new report by Mr. Katoch committee report. So tell me one thing, Department of Pharmaceuticals comes under which ministry? Chemical and fertilizer. So this has been often asked by UPSC in prelims. It does not comes under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It comes under the Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. So this Katoch committee report, it was constituted by the government. The Ministry of Chemical and Fertilizer has said that in the next 1 year, they would be creating a separate ministry for pharmaceutical and medical device sector. Now, if there is a committee, okay, try to understand this point. If there is a committee, then there is a problem which that particular committee is trying to tackle. So always, whenever you read any committee report, please find the problem first. Then only you would be able to appreciate the report of the committee. So most of the recommendations are given in the module. I will just highlight what is the problem. The problem is that 80% of bulk drugs or the active pharmaceutical import, what we say, they are imported from China. Okay. Though we say that we have a very flourishing pharmaceutical industry, we export the product to I think more than 100 countries throughout the world, but the bulk ingredients of the medicine we are importing from China. One of the reasons that is said is that the inverted duty structure. So this particular term, it's a technical term, inverted duty structure. Can anyone explain it to me?
Inverted duty structure means you are importing the good that's at lower tax, but when you are importing the raw materials.
Yeah. So maybe go back and read this year's survey. Okay. In this year's survey, first chapter, the economic advisor talks about this point. India needs to tackle this inverted duty structure, and bringing GST would be a step to tackle this particular inverted duty structure. Okay. It is technical. If you want, I could explain it now, but if you could go back and read, I think it would be more good. Further, interest rates in India are very high as compared to China. China normally the interest rate is 5 to 6% versus India it's 11 to 12%. So all these needs to be changed. Thereby this committee report, what the committee said, nothing. Committees अगर ऐसा कुछ भी problem होगा तो यही बोलेगी भाई cluster बना लो. So what the committee said कि make a cluster. क्लस्टर बन जाएगा, एफिशिएंसी बढ़ जाएगी, ऑप्टिमाइजेशन हो जाएगा. प्लस वन वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट विद रिस्पेक्ट टू केमिकल इंडस्ट्री इन जनरल इज दैट पॉल्यूशन नीड्स टू बी टेकन केयर ऑफ. ठीक है, ट्रीटमेंट प्लान शुड बी देयर. सो अगर पूरा एक क्लस्टर बनेगा देन दे कुड हैव अ कॉमन ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट. पॉल्यूशन एंड वेस्ट डिस्पोजल इज अ मेजर पॉइंट. फर्दर आपके इंडस्ट्रियल जोन्स आ रहे हैं, सो व्हाट यू कुड डू इज दैट यू कुड हैव अ cluster in that particular industrial zone. Further, single window clearance and fiscal and financial incentives such as tax break, soft loan should be made available. So अगर आपने problem identify कर ली recommendations committee की, mainly I think if you read it you will find that there is nothing new. It is like an open secret. Everyone know that these are the steps taken by the government, but year on and on and on we are not able to take those steps. Okay, thank you. So maybe if any problem, I would be outside. Ma'am will be taking class for international relations. Thank you.